right, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. It's 4:02, at least on this clock. Whichever one we want to use. And we'll go ahead and start off with the roll call. So say present if you're here. Luke Horning is here. Ethan Kirk should be coming soon. Charlie Benny.
Here.
Matt Bullock.
Present.
All right. First question, are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
Staff has nothing for you this evening.
Just wondering, so I see the new business, does that allow for some discussion?
Well, we do have, yes, new business will, but we do have an update, for you regarding, board vacancies. Is that what you were wanting to?
No, discussion on, new code adoption among
Yes,
your
absolutely.
members.
So
Okay.
we have a presentation that's been prepared. We have a slide deck for you. Our code crew is here to talk about those code adoptions, and then we do have space at the end for questions.
Okay.
Certainly we can pause through the presentation this afternoon if you want to stop us as we go along and we have some questions. Otherwise, we've created space at the end for questions as well.
Great, that should be sufficient. There are no minutes to approve since it's been a couple of years now, so we can skip that. And then updates and staff and boards, so.
As you know, the Board of Review is a 5-member board, and so we currently do have a vacancy, and we've been advertising that vacancy online. We have received one contractor that practices locally. He's a plumbing contractor, Carlos Mariano, who is interested in serving on the board. And so I would like to ask for some discussion on that from the Board of Review, because if the members of the board would like, we can take a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for an appointment to the board. I don't believe we've received any other through our portal. So Carlos reached out to me directly, said that he was interested in serving on the board, has experience in Lake County. I know you all know him. So I would just open that up for discussion if you'd like to entertain that idea.
Yeah, I think Carlos would be an excellent choice for the board. He brings a no-nonsense approach to, and he's very knowledgeable. So, yeah, so.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't have as much experience with him, but I've heard great things and have worked with him a little bit, and I think it'd be good to have his perspective from the plumbing and heating side of things. We haven't ever had that, and I think it's certainly valuable with everything he has to work through, so.
I agree. I think he's great. It'd be a great addition. Good knowledge base from a different perspective.
Okay, then would you like to entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to appoint Carlos Mariano to the Board of Review?
I motion to appoint Carlos to the board.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, take a vote.
Aye.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, great. Staff will take that recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners at the next regular meeting.
Great.
And that's all that really staff has for you. We're gonna get into a lot of discussion through the slides about next steps in this 2026 year of codes. So we'll present that kind of and open it for discussion for you as part of the presentation tonight.
Okay.
Good.
So Ethan, we can add you to the roll call.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a little catch up, we did just make a vote to recommend Carlos to be our 5th board member.
Okay.
And that was passed by the 3 of us anyway, and that's gonna go to the commissioners now for approval there.
Okay.
So we can fill that 5th vacancy.
Which Carlos?
Carlos Mariano.
Okay, yep, plumber.
Yep. Yeah. And do we have any old business to discuss?
I have nothing for you.
Okay. Then I think we're ready for new business, move right on to the presentations.
Oh, do I have an extra pen around here? So here's some. Take care of you.
So, we just thought we'd start with a round of introductions, this evening. I think, the Board of Review has already identified themselves, but if you would all like to just, do a quick introduction to, maybe your SHUMS partners and members of the audience today, and just kind of, in what capacity you serve, the community. So, if that sounds good, we could start with you, Charlie. I know you've
Sure.
been on the board for a while.
Yeah, I've been on the board for a while. I've been, lived in Lake County for, probably 33, 34 years, something. And, been building for about 25 years, give or take. And, love it here and enjoy it, and then, just really enjoy working with everybody, that I get to be with, yeah, so.
I'm Luke Corning, board chair. I've been on the board for about 5 years, I don't know. It's gone by quick.
Yeah.
We were on for the last round of new codes. Been in construction most of my adult life. I worked for KW Construction, and then I also have my own design company as well for architectural design.
And I'm Ethan. My business partner and I are general contractors with Downstream Construction. I've been on the board, a little bit longer than Luke, but not much. I'm the vice chair. I've lived in Lake County since 2017, and I love to literally and figuratively help build this community. So that's why I'm in my position here.
Matt, you wanna?
Hey, Matt Bullock, local contractor and newish member of the board.
And maybe then we could go to the SHUMS team.
I'm Cole Cloward, I'm the Colorado Regional Director for SHUMS CODA, and we'll be helping consult on the code adoption and everything else for you guys. Fill in occasionally for John, as he's our inspector up here, so you may have seen my face on inspections. Other than that, coordinate all plan reviews, those kind of things that come through program. So work with you gentlemen, and all the other stuff.
He's taken over for Steve Thomas.
Yeah, took over for Steve.
Okay.
And a few of you know, Hope. Oh, we can't hear you, Hope.
Now, can you hear me now?
We can.
Coming through, yep.
Sorry about that. But I'm Hope Medina, excuse me, SHUMS CODA Associates, and I've had the privilege of serving with you as we had fun with this on the last go around, and prior to that, I'm managing director for I am a first always been a resource for Lakeville. They all be like near me.
I'm sorry, you guys. Just
We got a share.
just
There
stop
we
it.
go.
We'll come back. I'm sorry about that. I'm just trying to increase our volume here. That's why I was doing that. Just, we're turned up as far as we can. Hope, just so you know, we're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you very well. So I don't know if there's anything on your side that we could, wanna do one just quick test with us again? Cause we do have our volume turned all the way up. Can't hear you at all now. Well,
We lost her.
Rejoin.
we lost her completely, so maybe we'll go on to Barbara, and I'm sure we'll see her join us again here in just a minute. So Barbara, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Great, yeah.
Perfect. So I'm Barbara Rice. I'm the Arizona Regional Manager, but I'm also the Fire Service Line Manager for Shums Coda Associates. And I will be working on consulting with the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, Hope, let's give it another chance here maybe. Are you ready? Oh, let me see if I can unmute you. Okay, there we go.
All right, is this any better?
So much
Much
better. So much better.
Okay. Well, I'm Hope Medina. I am the Energy and Sustainability Manager for Shums Coda Associates, and I've had the privilege of working with many of you for the last trip on adopting the codes and even the previous one before that. So I've been around for quite some time. I'm here as a resource for you as far as the code adoption. And as many of you know, forever and a day, I'm always a resource for you. And you guys are near and dear to my heart because my grandfather was actually born in Leadville. So.
Nice.
It's a fun fact. And John, I know most of you know John, but John will have you go next.
Hey everybody, I'm John Schweitzer, Building Plumbing Mechanical Inspector, Lake County, Leadville. And I also reach out to Red Cliff and Minturn. So we have just had a wildfire code meeting in Eagle County today. So there's little action going on over there. And thank you for inviting me today.
Great. And then in the room, we have Leadville Lake County Fire Rescue.
Hi everybody, I'm Dan Daly, I'm the fire chief.
Awesome. And we have C4, our energy consultant that's helping with our climate action plan.
I'm Rishi Mutu from C4, and this is the county, it's the sustainability contract.
Awesome. And from the city of Leadville?
Hi, I'm Chapin LaChance, I'm the Director of Community Development for the city of Leadville, so I'd be Ann's counterpart at the county. My role in this will really be, the city has a IGA, intergovernmental agreement with the county to administer building department services. So I'll work with Ann to make sure that everything gets adopted on the city side. And then going forward, our department does the building code sign-offs for like zoning review. So that's kind of short-term and long-term how we'll be involved in this.
Awesome. Thank you, Chapin. And from my team, I have code enforcement.
Don Helmick, do land use code enforcement.
Awesome. Shelby, or GIS, I'm sorry.
I'm Shelby, I do GIS mapping for the county.
And from the building department?
Michaela Frosto, Women Tech.
And she also is our recording secretary for the Board of Review, our new recording secretary. So welcome, Michaela. And we also are joined by the county attorney.
Hi, Matt Hobbs, county attorney.
Awesome. All right, great. So moving on, I'm going to go ahead and minimize this as well. I'll actually go back to share and we'll go back to the presentation. Thank you for that. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to talk, I'm gonna kind of start us off and talk about the codes that you're gonna be looking at this year and the timelines that we are under. So under Senate Bill 25-142, we are required to adopt a fire code, and we are looking to adopt the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code. We had talked, many years ago about that, or well, actually, I think at the time that we did our previous adoption, doing the WUI code. But we were right in the middle of the wildfire planning study that we were doing in order to create our wildfire protection plan. And so we weren't quite ready. We hadn't really determined our boundaries, and so we were doing that work. And so we are now in a situation where under state legislation, we are required to look at adopting a code. And so we have Barbara here this evening to talk to us about that, and Dan. Dan's provided you the state overview on the resiliency code, and Barbara's gonna walk us through that. But as far as deadlines, we have a deadline for adoption of no later than April 1st. And then we have a couple of months until we're required to be enforcing that code, so we have until July 1. And Barbara will go into a little more greater detail when we get to that part. Along with, we are required again to look at adoption of the International Energy Code, Conservation Code, the IECC. And so we have from now until June 30th, and during this time, if a jurisdiction adopts or updates its building code, we must adopt either the 2021 or an equivalent energy code, along with the Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code. If we have not adopted under those parameters after July 1, we must adopt the Model Low Energy and Carbon Code or a more restringent code. And Hope is here to walk us through that, but our goal is really being able to look at the 2021 Energy Code and the 2024 Code and we're gonna be kind of talking about a comparison of those this evening along with the I-codes. And to make an informed decision of what pathway we want to move forward. But those are the timelines that we're moving, or that we're keeping in mind as our deadlines. And then we're going to be looking at the I-codes at the exact same time. So our IRC, our IBC, our fuel gas, our mechanical, fire, and the existing building code. And then, of course, we always align with whatever the state and electrical codes are. So our adoption just aligns with whatever iteration that the state is under. So our target for those are, and you'll see in the next slide, May 19th, with the thought of being adopted and ready before the June 30th deadline. So let's talk about a little bit about what does it take. Since the IGA, as Chapin was talking about, we have the administrative responsibility for both the city and the county. So we wanted to start with the Wildfire Resiliency Code, and what does that timeline look like? So the city and the county adopt our codes under two different processes. The city of Leadville uses an ordinance process, and the county uses a resolution process. So an ordinance process means that requires two readings. So we have to introduce it, and that's considered the first reading. Then we have a publishing requirement, and then we go to public hearing and the second reading, and typically there's adoption. It's not an 8-day waiting period, is it? At the second reading, if it's adopted, does it become effective then?
It's effective 30 days from publishing of the reading,
So it would be effective March 26th, from the publication date?
Yeah, there are some things that we can do to get that adoption date
If it's moved up.
But it's 30 days from the date that it's published in full.
Okay, so we're still, with that June 30th date in mind, I built these deadlines and from that forward so that we make sure we built in enough time through our process that we're not in jeopardy of going beyond those deadlines. So this is our tentative deadline and what we're looking at for the city adoption. For the county, we have a 30-day publication notice and for the public hearing, and we adopt and approve it on the same day of the public hearing if that's possible in the county. So we'd be looking at adopting by resolution and with the same timeline, because the city council meets beginning at 6 o'clock in the evening on March 17th, and the Board of County Commissioners will meet at 11 o'clock on the 17th. So we'd be looking at our public hearings on the same day. We really wanted to align things for consistency this time. Last time we ended up about 2 months apart. Because of the different processes. So this time we're really trying to make sure that we end up adopted on the same, or in the public hearing in the same day in the, for both the city and the county.
Okay, one question. So can this adoption be done completely independently of any other code adoption? So if we're looking at adopting the rest of the I codes, energy codes, whatnot, can that be a whole separate process? Or is it best to align everything?
Well, what we're trying to, can we, okay,
I mean,
let me make
it
sure I
seems
understand.
ambitious to try and,
Well, we
all the
have
I codes.
right,
Yeah,
We have
we
different
have a,
deadlines, this has an April deadline.
yeah, this
Right.
was an April 1st deadline, that's why this is moving fast.
Yeah.
To make sure that we're compliant with state requirements of adoption by April 1st. So that's why the wildfire resiliency code is, we're off to the races already on it.
Yeah.
And so, that's why that one's coming first. There is, I believe, an allowance that, the requirement that I told you, when we're adopting codes, we have to look at the energy code. I think that we are allowed to do the wildfire before we do the energy code.
Yes, that one can be totally
that
separate.
doesn't,
So that can be totally separate.
Okay.
And so we're just moving this one first because of the deadline.
right, it's pretty urgent.
Yeah.
Now, one of the caveats with this one is, so you have the 2 months.
Yeah.
Or the 3 months from when you adopt to start enforcement. So if you adopt March 17th, then you have to start enforcement on June 17th.
Yeah, and there's no reason we couldn't start adoption sooner than that too.
Exactly.
Right.
Sure, but no later than kind of thing. And so I'm sorry, that actually should be.
Yeah, you just, if you adopt on April 1st, that's your,
That, yes,
July 1st
If
is
we
your
would have made it-
enforcement day.
very good. So from the time of adoption, we get 2 months. Okay.
There may be,
3 months.
you could check differences between adoption and effective date.
Well, yeah, because we're effective immediately. So March 17th will become effective. That was my question. But I thought there was some consideration if there was an urgent issue. So we'll work
Those
together.
are the nitty-gritty details, we'll just have to, on the time.
Yeah, on the effective. So for the county, it will be effective upon adoption, and I'll work with Chapin to make sure that we know what the effective date will be in the city.
Is there any likelihood that we're gonna wanna make amendments? Or is it possible to make amendments to this, or?
Yes.
We can talk, we'll talk about that a little later in the presentation.
Question?
Okay, so here's our timeline for the energy code and the I codes. So again, we've gotta follow the same process in both the city and the county. So what I've got down here is that we would have our ordinance ready for introduction and first reading by April 21st. It would be published in its entirety in the newspaper on April 30th. And then the public hearing at City Hall would be May 19th. Same as it will be heard in the county on the same day, same kind of thing. And we can, and we'll be publishing in the paper on April 16th. So the city will publish in the Herald on the 21st, we'll be doing it just a few days ahead of them on April 16th.
Just a thought on that, and we could potentially publish on the same day, because we just have a 15-day minimum.
Okay.
We could potentially just publish on the same, public notice,
Okay,
to simplify the process.
that sounds great, and so then just wanted to talk a little bit about, the pace at which we're gonna be going to get this all done. And so how long will it take to go through the review process to create the ordinance and resolution drafts? And how do we engage with the public? So tonight, and I think we'll come back to this kind of at the end of everybody's presentation, but some goals that I'm hoping to set tonight are how would you like to set your reoccurring meetings so that we are developing and creating the ordinance and resolution? And we're going to prioritize the wildfire resiliency code first. And but by early March, we need to have drafts of the resolution and ordinance. And what my timeline of what I'm thinking is that our target would be to have those draft documents and we really know what we're gonna look at and what we'll be proposing by early March, and then be able to lead into a town hall meeting like we did last time. And so we can take comment, answer questions from the building industry and the public that may have questions about it, and then we'll be supporting with the website, and so that we can have feedback forms on there, and we can take in comment for your consideration as well. So that's just kind of, and so we can circle back to that, because I'd love to, in this meeting, with some goals about next meetings and make sure that you don't have any questions on that. So now I am happy to turn it over to Barbara and let her present on the Wildfire Resiliency Code.
Okay, thank you. And of course, if you have any questions as I go along, please feel free to ask. So the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code, as you know, is something that's gone in effect over the last year. And the whole purpose of it is to safeguard, life and property in those wildland urban interface areas, and to mitigate hazards through construction, defensible space, and hazard mapping. And this is very much like the I-Code, the International Wildland Urban Interface Code, but the Colorado Resiliency Code has taken the 2024 International Wildland Code and adapted it to what they feel best suits the state. And they have done the mapping for the jurisdictions as well. One of the differences in the Colorado Code is while it does apply to new construction, alterations, and retrofits, it focuses mostly on just the buildings that are occupiable or have habitable space. And the International Code deals with unoccupied buildings as well. The code kicks in only if there's additions that are greater than 500 square feet, and then just some minor alterations. So it's a little less restrictive in that regard than the International Wildland Code. And then if you do certain repairs, you don't have to bring the whole structure up. So I'm ready for the next slide. Great. So, as I mentioned, the state has already mapped Colorado into the 3 zones, low, moderate, and high. And this saves the jurisdictions having to do that by looking at their topography and their weather, and basically their fire activity in that area. One of the other things that the Colorado Resiliency, John, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just didn't see the white built environment, as-built environment from the Colorado map, like the city of Leadville would have.
Right, I've got a map, and the map is on the next question, is on the next slide. So can I go to that one to talk about the map? Would that be okay? Otherwise, I'm going to squirrel on this. So this does eliminate, on the mapping. So there is something on Leadville, and we'll talk about that in the next one, I believe. One of the things the Colorado Code does is it removes water and access requirements from the code. Now, like the International Code, it is meant to supplement the IBC and the IFC that's adopted by the jurisdiction. So by removing water and access code requirements, it can leave it up to whether or not the jurisdiction applies the IFC. But the way that the Colorado Code has broken out the two different ignition types, and if you were familiar with the International Code, non-conforming water can be non-existing water. So the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code can really benefit construction that's in areas where it's too difficult to get water or water's not available. And they do this by the mapping and then basically focusing on the structure hardening requirements. They also have the opportunity for property owners to do something called ground truthing, where they can request site-specific review to take them out of the hazard severity zone that they are mapped in. Oh, okay, almost to the map, okay? Also, one of the things about the state code is they have addressed historic structures, right? Which is really great. And they have exemptions for historic structures in the wildfire hazard areas, as long as they are eligible for listing on the Register of Historic Places or determined to be contributing to the historical significance of a registered historic district, right? Or a district determined to qualify as historic Okay, or that's designated under a state or local historic preservation program. So this is something that the Colorado Code addresses that the International Code does not. And then the authority having jurisdiction, so the city of Leadville and Lake County can establish your own historic preservation exemptions as needed in these areas. Here's the map, and here's just a kind of an overview. It doesn't encompass all of it. Leadville, as you mentioned, John, is not mapped. And what that means is it doesn't have to meet the requirements that are in the WUI code, right? If it's not mapped, it's not even mapped as a low hazard or low intensity. So given that the actual city itself doesn't have a lot of concern with having to follow the resiliency code. Does that make sense?
That wasn't exactly my understanding from Chief Burnett from the state. It was that the jurisdiction was up to decide what those designations should be, please.
Yes, yeah, they can do that. And if they designate nothing, then that is fine. And I know that we talked, that was, I believe, a question that I was in a meeting with Cole and another member of our company on another matter with Chief Burnett. And he said it was up to the jurisdiction to decide what designation it was in there. So if the jurisdiction decides it's a low intensity, or even, again, it doesn't have the fuel types or the fire weather within there, it doesn't have to fall within any of the hazard classifications.
Hey Barbara, does that also take into account if the property is split between a high intensity and moderate intensity? Do we as the jurisdiction get to choose?
Decide? Yeah, but you would have to, what you would have to do is you would have to take a look at the fuels and see which the majority is, and then you would have to submit that to the state, right? Or do the ground truthing process that they allow for that. Most of this county currently is mapped in high intensity and moderate intensity. So what that means is the majority of the county would have to fall under the ignition resistant class 2 or ignition resistant to construction types, which is on some of the slides we're going to move to here.
And Barbara Chapin from the city has a question as well.
Hi,
Yes.
Barbara.
Hi.
City of Leadville, I have a question about the areas that are within city limits that are designated right now as moderate intensity. So there's probably approximately 8 to 10 places on this within city limits that are on the periphery of city limits that are designated right now as moderate intensity. So when you mentioned that the city can choose, are we choosing everything within city limits or just choosing from in the areas that are currently
In
not
the areas, I believe it is in the areas that are mapped, and you could look at that and then assess it, you know, based on the fuel types and I think I've outlined some of that in here. Your fuels, your fire weather, and then concerns about why can't I defensible space, right? So you can put in and request that those areas be removed from the state through that process.
Okay, I'm just gonna repeat that back to make sure I understood. So the area, approximately 8 areas that are within city limits that are currently mapped and designated, we could request those to be removed.
You can. You absolutely can. Yeah. You just have to show why, you know, and if it fuels. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Hey, any other questions in the room for Barbara?
Who would be qualified to make the determination whether,
Ground truthing.
yeah,
Well, you would do,
Go ahead.
it could be up to the jurisdiction, and you would do a site assessment to look at fuels. I know a lot of this, some of the properties we work with in Utah, as they're developed in the area or as development occurs, that reduces those hazards, then they're removed from the map or they're at least classified to a lower one. So it might be the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction may ask a third party. It's up to the jurisdiction to do those site assessments.
And I think just to expand on that, that would, locally, we would put that under the jurisdiction of Leadville Lake County Fire Rescue to help make the recommendation for that to the
Right.
city.
Okay. And
Yeah.
also, correct me if I'm wrong, but the state had a grant, didn't have a grant, something like that, to be able to hire 3 people or 4 people it was for the state of Colorado to come out and do those assessments as well and help with the enforcement of this.
I do know the last time we met with Chief Burnett, he did mention that they were starting to get more people to help with that. Yep. That was brought up in a meeting we had with him over another project. So yes, they are trying to expand their staffing for these assessments.
Great, and so knowing how quick our timeline is, so we say those grants would help to make this determination for either mapping, including the unmapped areas under a certain classification, or asking for removal of those, and helping with the actual administration of it. So I'm just wondering, like, and we can talk about that at the end too, kind of our plan for making that plan.
I'm not really sure how the state will address it or what their timelines are going to be, how much their staffing is going to be available. So you may not be able to change the mapping before adopting the code, but then you can address the mapping portion afterwards as projects develop within that.
What?
Yeah, I do think it'd be important to define who that person's gonna be though. Budgeting purpose and everything else in the resolution that's passed, so.
Yeah. And do you mean the person within your agency? Because I think the grant was for hiring of new personnel within the state fire prevention office.
That's correct. The grant was for DFPC.
Right.
And so what I'm hearing is that we can move forward with adoption and we can be a work in progress with looking at making amendments to the mapping.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you can amend mapping just throughout until you go to a new code, because again, as development occurs, a lot of areas, like in different states, I see this a lot again, like in Utah, as development occurs, that changes that area or even that property, they can get readjusted on their mapping, even long after adoption of your code.
Great.
One more question, who would be responsible for enforcing this code? Would it be the building department or would it be Lake County Fire?
So I think we've been talking about kind of looking at that, like the administration part of this from kind of a shared point of doing the hardening inspections as part of the building inspection, and then the zone inspections as there's a couple different ideas. One is a self-reporting affidavit. Don's here too. We wanted to offer that, maybe we can help with maybe some follow-up zone inspections of the site. We've talked about in doing planning review that, we're doing, the planning departments at the city and the county are looking at the site plans for the zone compliance. So I think it's, we're in a kind of a peer review with other jurisdictions as we're kind of working out the administration part. But those are some, I think, initial ideas that we've had collectively.
Makes sense. And I mean, the fire department already has to do their plan review as well, so it wouldn't be too terrible, I imagine, to be reviewing for this stuff.
I think just to share a little bit with the review, when you get into, and we'll look at these on the next couple slides, when you get into the different types of construction, right? Your plan reviewer has to have a knowledge of construction, of how to review for 1 hour fire rated construction, what's non-combustible, what is not. So it could very well be fire, it could be building, it could be fire and building split it. Some jurisdictions, building reviews the structures and fire does the site review.
Okay, makes sense.
Are you ready for the next slide, Barbara?
I am.
Okay.
All right, so just to touch on, because you are in, there's 2 structure hardening classes in the Colorado Resiliency Code. And because most of the county is in the moderate and high hazard, you would have to go to the class 2, so highest level of kind of fire protection, fire resistant, ignition resistant construction. And that means, non-combustible or 1 hour rated exterior walls. There's protection for eaves and soffits, and this is specific for embers, right? To ember and flame impingement is a big problem, so this is to reduce that. Tempered glass windows or double paned windows can also apply. They have to have, or I should say, multiple paned windows in the code, which is to just help preserve openings and for an amount of time due to heat, radiant heat. And then non-combustible or Class A or B decking, Class A roofing. But again, while the construction it hardens the structure, makes it more fire resistant, it does also allow for reduction of the need of water. Site protection in the Colorado Code, they have defensible space zones. This basically looks at non-combustible surfaces within 0 to 5 feet. They have another zone, fuel reduction. The Colorado Forester has a document with that follows FireWise. So again, these site protection with regard to defensible space zones definitely has to be something that the planning personnel are aware of, especially with regard to landscape requirements you may have. So you may have to amend certain codes with regard to that, or at least allow for changes within these areas. Basically, your next steps would be to adopt the appendices. There are not very many appendices in this, and most of them have to do with administrative processes. So you may not want to adopt them because most of them have to deal with permitting and inspection requirements. And then any policies, of course, that you need to develop for any historic variances or processes. And also, should you wish to have the city of Leadville designated a light hazard, which takes you away from any type of construction hardening issues, you'd want to work on that. Staff training, again, for the policies or what you're going to do, and then however you're going to do the public education for your builders and homeowners and stakeholders.
Very good. You can take a pause real quick. Any other questions for Barbara? And Barbara, I have a couple questions. So
yeah.
The hardening requirements that you provided, those are, is that an exhaustive list of what would be required for construction? And
It is pretty much a summary of the different types of things. And then when you get into the code, you have a lot of options on how you make that, right? Your Class A roofs, they could be non-combustible. There's certain flashing requirements for them. But those elements, also fences and over 8 feet, and then retaining walls have to be ignition resistant too, which just makes complete sense. But that's pretty much those areas that have to have an ignition resistant type of construction in them. And then there's just many ways to accomplish that.
And what I heard was that there's a list of materials being created. Is that as kind of a resource?
Well, currently, now if again, this code supplements the IBC and the IFC. So when we look at the International Wild and Urban Interface Code, that code allows for ignition resistant materials that are either listed per standards. I believe there's a UL and an ASTM, if I'm correct. Same standards are outlined in this code, or you can follow the prescriptive codes in Chapter 7 of the IBC for fire resistant construction for the various elements like exterior walls, decking, those types of things. There's a lot of materials out there that are rated for 1 hour, and there's so many different ways to make assemblies. So you can either use the prescriptive code in Chapter 7 of the IBC, or a lot of times there are materials and assemblies that are listed per the 2 standards in the code that are prescriptive. So if you're reviewing those and they follow those listings, then they're acceptable. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And the body of the state code gives some recommendations on what types of material would be acceptable under each of the classes.
Yes. Yeah. It's just types of it, but beyond that, there's so much more that could be allowed.
Could I add a little bit, please? One of the things that came up in the code-specific sections was 404.8 exterior doors. And it has solid core wood not less than 1 3/4 thick, or have a fire protection of not less than 20 minutes.
Right.
And the glazings can all just be regular thermal pane, double pane glass, which is not a problem, but the sliding glass doors came up as kind of a weird issue, and we're not sure yet on a material supplier that might supply sliding doors, non-solid wood, that are 20 minutes. So just some weird stuff like that shows up, Ann.
Yeah. But it also, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, it also does say multi-pane glass. So maybe they would look at that as well, because most sliding doors are multi-paned with an air gap, right?
Multi-layered glazing panels, yes, but it just talks about the solid core wood door, and then it says that the windows within those doors have to be per the 404.7. So it doesn't really take out the frame of the door or the rails and stiles of the doors specifically.
Right, correct.
But your sliding glass doors are also tempered anyway.
They are.
So,
and that's allowed in the code. Tempered glass is specifically allowed.
Yeah, that's speaking to the glass though, and I understand if the door frame around the glass doesn't meet
Gives
that
away.
specific
melts the vinyl out.
listing, the 20-minute or solid wood, which usually isn't the case. I mean, those are almost always, I mean, and I wonder if maybe those would be considered a window, like a full light door, if that goes under the category of a window. I don't know, so certainly something to look into.
Those are the nuances that we get to massage. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Barbara, this is JP. Can I ask a question about the historic variance?
Yes.
This may not be necessary if the city of Leadville as a whole is designated as low hazard.
Yes.
Just humor me, in the situation that it was medium hazard, we have about 80 blocks of National Historic District, about 1,500
Oh, yes.
But we
yes,
don't,
I know. I love that place.
We don't have some of the documents that would be listed to meet the exemptions that were already in that bullet point, so we'd probably be seeking like the variance.
Correct.
And that would just be probably for the district as a whole, because we don't have all the surveys that would be needed to meet those bullet points for the exemptions. So question is it possible to, if we were in a medium class hazard designation for some reason, would it be possible to request a variance for the entire historic district as a whole?
It is possible. Again, it's going to be a lot tougher to do it if you're in the moderate. or the high hazards. But again, if you know you don't have those fuels or those other issues with it, it should be you should have no problem doing that. And you can do, if I remember right, the state law allows the jurisdiction to set up your own various and to determine your own historic preservation area, kind of, right? Outside of those bullets. So I think you know, the jurisdiction has a lot of leeway there in that with that regard. And this code definitely took historic structures, historic architecture, historic areas into you know, into consideration when they built this. This is not something that's outlined in the WUI code in the international.
Thank you.
Barbara, can you just speak a little bit more to when this code would be triggered? So I heard the 500 square foot additions, but like for instance in that, would it be if you're building a 500 square foot addition, then the entire rest of the house has to be updated to it? Does it ever come into play with remodels?
So again, so here's a couple of things. First of all, if the structure, any structure is legal and conforming at the time the code is adopted, it's good to go. But if you make an addition to that structure that expands it more than 500 square feet, right? You do have to bring that addition under the current code. And whether or not you have to bring the host structure in there depends on the scope of work. So you do not necessarily, which is very much the same as with the international, you don't necessarily have to bring the whole code up. If you are re-roofing, and this totally makes sense in the wild and urban interface areas, if you're re-roofing more than 25% or 25% or more, I think, or whatever, 25% is the sweet spot. Thank you, John. 25% is the sweet spot. The entire roof has to be brought up to Class A, Class B standards.
Okay.
So again, there's a, you know, if you add a deck to it, your deck would have to meet the fire code compliance, but you don't have to go back and redo the whole house.
Okay.
Any other questions in the room for Barbara? I was just gonna mention on Dan's handout, the QR code for the state code is included in the handout. And I did want to give the floor to Dan if you have anything else that you wanted to add on, or thank you for these handouts. This has got a great amount of there's also the peer review that I've been talking about that I've been attending with Cole. There's a QR code for that in here as well. So if you want to have nothing better to do on a Wednesday and you'd like to hang out and hear how all the jurisdictions in the state are kind of working through this. It's a great time though. There's a lot of good questions that are being asked, and I did see the QR code for that's in here too in your packet.
What they do, those peer meetings have different jurisdictions on kind of what the Colorado code was based on and where they brought in structure hardening, things like that. The last peer meeting, I guess.
Yes.
The last peer meeting was on structure hardening, and they brought in, what was it, Gunnison County, and then also County, to talk about what they've done and how they're implementing the code.
So both of those are, thank you Dan for these handouts, because I saw that there's QR codes to get to those websites.
Yeah, and on those websites, the processes for requesting different mapping, and then also the state statute that's kind of a companion to the code are on those websites. They've provided a lot of information.
Well, Barbara, it's really nice to meet you. I'm looking
Thank
forward
you.
to working together.
Yes, I do too.
There's, you know, we were talking about, at the time it was the WUI, now it's the IWIC. It was coming to Lake County at some point, and I'm actually kind of pleased to see that the state kind of stepped in to be able to have a lower code that's a little bit more palatable for jurisdictions. Now, I understand that this is going to be tough for, you know, as we go through this change for the hardening of these structures.
Yes.
I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about, you know, the fire side of things, because in all of Lake County, I just consider it all the Louis, everything, to include the city. Our predominant winds, our fires, our bad forests. Here, we have something, that happens that we can't get ahead of. It's gonna be absolutely just devastating to our community. You know, we've talked about sprinkler systems in the past, and we're like, no, we're not gonna go there quite yet. You know, and, you know, what can we do to protect our community members, during wildland fires? And, I'm pleased to see that we are finally going to adopt something that, has some kind of hardening in our true wildland areas, because it's just a matter of when, it's not if. So, anything that we can have that's out there collectively working on this together, to make our forests and our homes better out there, and for our life safeties as we're going in, then I appreciate. So I'm looking forward to the process to get through this. The bad part about that, of course, I don't like the state coming down and be like, we will, right? But again, from what I understand, the state put a lot of time and energy into this, and they really thought of a lot of good things, I think, for jurisdictions to include ours. So that's all I have. I mean, that was a great presentation on everything
Thank you.
that you know that we need to know initially before we dive in. So.
Right. And again, Chief, I mean, it is a cleaner code than an international code, and it does it takes water and access out of it. And I think, again, when you look at, if you're familiar with the WUI code, you know, you have conforming defensible space and conforming water, and then it kicks into what kind of ignition resistant, and non-conforming water can also mean no water. So this code is so clean, with regard to, you know, trying to do its best to protect, and they really focused on the ignition resistant construction and defensible space, which does make it a lot easier for those areas where water is a problem, because that is a high cost, that infrastructure is a high cost to developers. I mean, again, you know, a little more fire resistant, ignition resistant construction costs a little more, but all development costs are passed along, and infrastructure like water and roads can be very expensive.
I don't know if anyone else has this question, but could you just give us the different, when you say water and access is something that would be required under the WUI and there's more understand or
Well, you already have it under your IFC, under your fire code. And so the WUI code, and again, also the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code as written in the code, they are meant to supplement, right? So if you go to the regular WUI code, the wildfire code, the International Wildland Code, they have some less restrictions for residential access. They open water up to allowing for NFPA 1142 calculations. But again, if there's no water, non-conforming water, per the footnote in the table in, I don't remember if it's chapter 5 or 4, I'm sorry, then you have to have ignition resistant construction, right? So this has just taken all of that out of the code and said, you're gonna provide some level of ignition resistant construction in defensible space, because that is protection. And I'm pretty sure the fire chief can also address it. When we look at the WUI, and won't spend a lot of time on this, I'll leave that up. The Wildland Urban Interface Code is to protect structures, and residents, but just like any code, it also is to protect the firefighters and the first responders. And if there's a home that has hardening, if it has defensible space, the firefighters have a better chance of protecting that house with little risk. I mean, I've been in wildland firefighting a little bit, and if it's a mess, if it's got wood shakes, if it's not defensible space, it's going to get a little ribbon tied around and they're not going to risk it. They're not going to be able to protect it. So all of these elements in this code, I think, and I'm working currently with my state. The state forester has asked me to work with them on something similar, and I'm really going to push the elements of this code to see if we can't do something very similar in Arizona, because I think it's a nice, clean code.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks.
Any other questions in the room? Okay, moving on. Cole, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Alright, so I know we're on the 2018 codes here right now, and some things that come into play between the 24 and the 21. So if we're jumping the 21 and going to the 24, I know that that's a big jump of 6 years. There are some things that are clarified and better in the IBC and the other I codes in the 24s. 21 sometimes, when looked at it from my view, has a little bit more loosely defined terms that don't really give you that much direction. A couple of these things I've listed here on the slide. Section 104, you had some alternate means and methods that were added, kind of broadening the scope from the 2018 into the 21. But the 24 further broadens that scope of where we're now accepting or looking to have the ability, gives the building official and those working for him more ability to accept alternate means and methods of construction, whether it's new technology, whether it is a different type of construction or engineered or listed or labeled. A lot of the differences in the 21 and 24 are listing and labelings per third-party inspections, third-party reports. The 24 gives a little more clarity for the building official to be able to ask for updated reports, those kind of things from third parties. Say you want to use, we're talking about structural hardening, what if there's a new system that comes out? 24 gives a little more direction on what the building official needs to require to say yes to that. 21 is just kind of left open-ended and implied. That, oh, you can do this, but a lot of building officials were left, well, what do I do and what do I need for it? So it kind of gives that little bit of more direction. The 21 IBC uses your occupancy-based risk categories. That's what classifies, hotels, hospitals, those kind of things, what the higher risk category, where you are, what the importance of the building is. The 24 expanded that to include PV. So we've got, around the state, we have a lot of different PV farms that are going in. So those get classified into that. And updated alignment and methodologies for the ASC 7 and actually brought into the code. I don't know if you've used it up here, but brought in a mapping tool. So the ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineers, has a mapping tool that you can get online. And you can actually plug in an address and it'll give you all of the snow loads, wind loads, earthquake, all of that online. Mm-hmm. So the ICC updated and put that information in the code as part of this is an accepted alternate method to what the design criteria of a jurisdiction is. 21 brought in more energy storage devices, right? ESS, we're all familiar with I think we are. Seen a few of them with our solar, and you bring in your batteries that you charge up and keep the battery so when the power goes out, you have use of your appliances and other things. 21 has brought more of that information into the code, but didn't really fully define parameters and things like that. 24 updates it and gives you more direction and more hand-in-hand working with the IFC. So the IBC and the IFC. Now this is true for the IRC too on the next slide, that more guidelines and parameters for ESS installations. As firefighters are finding that when those go up, they're very hard to fight. And then 21, one of the big changes to the 21 from the 2018 is the jump from the 2009 accessibility standard to the 2017 accessibility standard. That standard, so whether you adopt the 21 or 24 code, you're going to adopt that standard anyway, as referenced in the code. Now the 2017 accessibility updated a lot of retrain, or not necessarily retrages, but clearance requirements because of all these motorized chairs that we have now. So you have an upgraded turning radius, you have a bigger T to access things, more space and clearance required for this. One of those that came into it is adult changing stations. Those are a big addition in the code, and the 2024 code actually added those in, 2021 does not require those. So they are 2024 IBC requirement with the supplement to the 117.1. Now those are basically just a big changing station for adults, like a baby changing station, but it has to get fully mounted to the wall, and then there's a bunch of parameters that are explained very clearly in the IBC, the 24 IBC and the 2017 A117. Essentially, the two codes are largely the same. They didn't update too many things or cause too many significant changes between the 21 and 24. So you're essentially getting the same code when you adopt the 21 and the 24, with a few more clarifying matters of the 24. I understand that there is some hesitance to jump over the code, but a lot of the state is already looking at going to the 2024 codes.
There's no PV in 21, in large scale, grid scale PV?
There
There's no
is,
guidance.
there just aren't as many provisions
Oh,
for
okay.
it. So the 24 kind of just dove deeper into it and gave you a broader scope of, okay, this is how you enforce it, this is what you look at. Because during those formative years of the code in the 21, those weren't really happening, they were just starting.
Yeah.
When you got those big solar farms and the big scale.
And is there, how does the 2018 deal with some of that?
It's just
Even
mentions
less
that
than-
it has to pretty much be listed and classified for those large scale, and so you're left largely to say, okay, well, what does the engineer say? Or what does the architect say? And what does the solar listing say about it? And so it just gives you a little bit more ability to actually regulate those kind of things. We can go to the next slide. So that's just an overview of what the IBC is. Now, I did not cover the IFC. I know that's a lot of words on my slides. The 21 carries over the same type of building official authority for the IRC as the 2018 has. In the 24, they totally rewrote, this is applicable to all the codes, they rewrote 104. That's your administrative section of the I codes, to give the building official a little more authority in his ability to allow interpretations, to allow alternate means and methods like we discussed on the other slide. One of the big changes in the IRC from the 21, you had standard set fire separation distance as it had been in the 2018 for your 2021 codes for townhomes, right? If you have townhomes on the same lot, how do you separate those? Do you have to put a lot line between them? That's what the IRC went off previously, but in the 24 code, they bring in an assumed lot line where you can put an imaginary line. So if you want to keep the same lot, but put a bunch of row homes on it, you can assume an imaginary property line between all of those like the IBC. As building officials, we've always used that in the past, just as an alternate method, but it's now in the IRC. And so you don't actually need to separate those into separate lots anymore. You can provide that fire separation right on the imaginary line. And as I mentioned before, there's more information about ESS requirements. We got a nice lovely table in the 2024 IRC that sends you to section 1207 of the IFC, where you have further information about sizing of ESS for your energy storage systems and what is allowed, how many you can have in a room, where they're required. And the 24 actually includes a nice diagram of putting ESS in a garage, of where you would need to put protections in place in the garage, whether it's installed on the front wall, that kind of thing. So you get a little more clarity with that. The 2018 and 21 IRC had no provisions for lofts and things like that in IRC, for tiny homes, things like that. The 2024 IRC incorporates many of those tiny homes requirements. So if you're looking to expand affordable housing, putting smaller homes on lots and things like that, you can get a lot of exceptions and other kinds of things through the 2024 code, where loft sizes can be, actually lofts weren't really allowed in the code unless you had a proper stair down from them. The IRC, the 2024 IRC allows you to have stairs, ladders, ship's ladders, those kind of things are all incorporated into that from kind of the tiny
How different is that stuff from the tiny home appendix in the 2018? You
A
know?
lot of the appendix has been incorporated in the code. So
Okay.
when we go through the code adoption process, appendices are kind of a code section that's being worked on, but is not ready for prime time. And through the 21 code cycle and into the 24 code cycle, tiny homes got a little more ready for the prime time, and so we incorporated some of those. Said, you know what, we've been doing this for enough years that we realized that some of the safety concerns that we had previously are not as blatant or glaring for tiny homes. And now we have been able to incorporate some of those. So I know that we have some of those issues up here for affordable housing, but that's not a
In
state.
the context of tiny homes, is that synonymous with like accessory dwellings, like ADUs in the same bucket?
Yes, and that's one thing that I did not put on here, so the 2024 IRC actually gives you expanded provisions for allowing ADUs. So if you wanna split a house in two, let's have one on the bottom and one on the top, as long as those smoke detectors are interlinked and other things like that, you don't have to put that hour separation in for ADUs, so you have an expanded ability to use that. And there's a bunch of other things in there, but the 21 just requires that hour separation no matter what. It's a two-family dwelling, at that point you have to have that separation.
Does it change minimum square footage requirements?
That's it.
Yeah, that's usually driven by zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Because you could have a code compliant home that's 170 square feet.
Yeah, but in the county, the zoning, we've got 600 feet as a minimum, in most zones, and 500 in business zone district, so that's a zone.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
Cole, could you please speak to the ESS energy storage system a little bit, so fire and all of us know about that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, so it just basically gives what battery type you're using. We've got a nice table and information on, okay, you can put it in garages, you can put it in crawl spaces, you can put it in single family dwellings as long as it's listed to a certain UL listing, which is 9540. Your Tesla power walls are listed to that, but you still have to have certain protections in place. Once you get above 20 kilowatt hours of storage, then it gets kicked into the fire code where you may have to separate it from the structure. You have to install it on the outside of the building so that there's no risk of fire inside the building. So in City of Cherry Hills Village, we have lots of people who like the Tesla Powerwalls, and there's one that wanted to put 6 of them in their garage. You can't put 6 in your garage because now you're over 80 kilowatt hours. So you're limited on the size of what each individual battery can have. 20 kilowatt hours is the maximum. Tesla Powerwall comes in at 16, so it's under the limit for one. And then your maximum is 80 kilowatt hours in one space. So you could essentially have 4 Tesla batteries in a garage and be okay and still not have to go to the fire code provisions. And that's because Tesla batteries are listed at 9540. Which means they have fire suppression in them, they have all these other extra things that are put into them. And that's one of the things that when we're doing reviews for ESS systems coupled with solar PV, we are looking at, is it all listed, do the batteries work, do they have the fire suppression, those kind of things. The expanded ESS information provides a lot more direction on when to bring it into the fire code. And whether or not you need to hour rate it and protect the dwelling from it, and those kind of things. Did that cover what you wanted, John?
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions before I move on?
Moving on from the IRC.
Okay.
The existing building code, so, the 2021 IBC, so this would apply to your historic structures and everything up here, gives you a better definition. The 24 gives you a better definition of repair versus demolition, better triggers of when you actually get to classify it into, okay, now we have to comply with the new construction, right? You have the typical type of, or classification of remodels, whether you are going for level 1, 2, or 3. Or a change of occupancy, or the prescriptive information. 21 leaves it a little more flexible, kind of adopted what was in the 2018 previously and kept that going. The 24 kind of gives you a broader vision and a little more ability to narrow it down and say, okay, this is only a repair, or this is a full demolition and we have to comply with the code. So the IEB, the 21, looked for like installation for windows, things like that, electrical, those kind of things. The 24 expands upon that and wants a little more compliance with NFPA 70, which is the NEC. And in Colorado, we have to adopt whatever the state adopts. And so that makes it even more palatable because it's following the stricter guidelines of the higher NEC. Gets you a better, 24 gives you a little more ability to reclassify a risk category. So in the IEBC, if you're moving from a B to an M or an M to an F1 or F2 occupancy, there are different risk categories that you get placed into for egress, for building, fire separation, safety, all that kind of stuff. The 24 clarifies that and gives you more ability to say, okay, this is where we're at, whereas the 21 just has a couple of tables with 5 or 6 lines that just say, okay, here you go, this is where you classify it. If you're moving from a higher risk to a lower risk, you don't have to do much with the movement. And that's just the way. Okay, John?
One of the things that Leadville has in particular is a lot of mud sills, and we've had a lot of repairs, just even stemming out of a bathroom remodel, for instance. Is there any anything in the way of allowing us to keep those repairs going that you can see in the 24 IEBC?
Yeah, so you can still keep those repairs versus demolition or having to comply with the complete new code. It doesn't limit you in terms of what you've been doing previously, it just kind of expands on when those triggers get put in place. So yeah, you'd still be able to repair those mud seals and everything under the IEBC. And then one of the things that the 24 does that is kind of rude, I think, is it adds in the language that if you are affecting or remodeling a building, an existing building, now you have to put in the provisions for a tone changing station.
Damn.
We can go to the next slide. So that's one of the drawbacks. There are a few drawbacks, but
Cole, can we still use technical and feasibility in some situations still?
yes, so that's always allowed per section 3 or whatever 301 of the IEBC is technical and feasibility. So obviously with historic structures, you can't always get it without ruining the historical provisions of the structure. So that's still in the code, that wasn't changed too much. Like I said, the 21 and 24 are extremely similar in those regards, other than all the updates they did to 104 to give a little more ability to the building official to make, determine whether an alternate means of methods is okay. Same thing with the IMC, so we got all of that same stuff in there, for section 104 on administration. The language in the 21 IMC allowed the building official to decide if you could use new refrigerants, which a lot of building officials are not necessarily mechanical guys and know a lot about refrigerants. Whereas the 24 brought in the new ATL and B2L refrigerants and a lot of the requirements around this. Now that's all technical speak to everyone in here, so A2L and B2L refrigerants are a little more flammable than what we're used to using. And so there are more protections that are required for that. And also limited 21 gave you some requirements for identification of refrigerants. The 24 gave you even more for labeling and marking of refrigerants. Because some of those are more flammable. One of the things that the 24 did give you that's not in the 21 or 18, you were allowed to use ductless kitchen hoods in I1 and I2 occupancies. So those are your hospitals, long-term living, senior care, assisted living type occupancies. Now you can use those in the 24 as ductless. And then in the 21, you had prescribed ventilation controls for a building. The 24 expands that into performance-based. So you're allowed to do a little bit of give and take with that. Alright, the IFGC, fuel gas code, which is also covered under plumbing code, which is adopted through the state anyway as well. The IFGC didn't require qualifications for a technical report preparer, whereas the 24 does. Also rewrite of 104, and technical opinions were implied in the 21, whereas they are authority, the building officials given authority to require this. These are just some of the bigger things that come into play. Again, not much change to the IFGC. Gas piping remains the same as it always has been. Does gas flow through steel pipe? Yes. Does it flow through CSST, your funny bendable pipe? Yep. Still goes through, and it still has the same weights and volumes. This code is very science-based, and so you don't see much of it changing because it has been tested down to the T. Alright, next slide. Alright. Like I said, the IPC is adopted through the state, if we want to make additional amendments through that, and the state is moving towards, they're on the 21 right now, but they are adopting the 24. So we're just in charge of enforcing that with their provisions. Any questions? I know that's a lot of words in me speaking, so I'm sorry. I can teach a whole class on all of those. An 8-hour class on each if you want. On the changes between those.
Not sure that would meet our deadline.
Alright. Okay, well, it looks like we're ready for you, Hope.
All right. Can you hear me now?
We
Still?
can.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Okay, so the energy code, I know this is the one you guys have all been waiting for because you love it so much. Real quick background, so everybody is on the an understanding of the difference in how these two editions of the energy code was developed. The 2021 IECC was developed under the process that has been the process since the inception of the IECC. So everything that Cole talked about, all the codes that he talked about, is the same process that was utilized to develop the 2021. Now, the development of the 2024 was the first edition that followed the new process to develop the energy code, which entailed basically where a consensus committee, a group of people voted on it, but it wasn't just a one-time meeting that everything was voted on. It was voted on throughout over a 2-year process. So we met every other week to develop it, and subgroups met every week or every other week on it. So the idea was that the 2024 had a lot more eyes on it to have it developed and ensure and try to make sure that the idea was that there was a good basis as to why this new thing was going to get put into the code. So that's kind of just a real brief background of the energy code. And so I know we're trying to determine what we would like to do as far as adopt the 21 or adopt the 2024. So as you can see, the values, I have a table set up here. This is just the thermal envelope values for the residential, because I know we are more of a residential community, and that is a big concern for us. So there were quite a few differences from what you would see in the 18 to what we have for the 21 and the 24. And what I did do is highlight those values in the column for the 21. So probably the big one is, as you can see, the ceiling R value goes from an R49 up to an R60.
I think it's the opposite.
So that,
right?
From the
Well,
I'm sorry?
18.
The 18.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Sorry.
from the 18 to the 21, it went from 49 to an R60. And then the other big one that happened is your walls, as far as the insulation value or amount that you have to have in there. So your R value in the past, we had 3 options in how we could get there. But now you get the opportunity, you can do cavity plus continuous, and for you, Ethan, I know you're already doing this, but it now allows for you to install insulation entirely on the exterior of the building, and that would be where your thermal envelope is. So in the 21, it brought that in. Now the values did increase. So instead of only having to have an option of maybe an R20 in the cavity, now the baseline is an R30 into the cavity. So that is a significant increase along with the ceiling. The other thing that did pop in is the fact that crawl spaces now allows for both the cavity only option, a continuous insulation only option, and a cavity plus continuous on there. So those were the major changes that happened in the 21 from what we're currently doing up in for the 18. Now for the 24, again, a big change that happened was at the ceiling, and our ceiling insulation then goes from an R60 back down to an R49, which is what we've been doing already. The next thing that really is a bonus for everyone is the fact that you now have an R value for if you are placing insulation entirely above a or R49. Now you only have to get an R30 continuous insulation. So the 21 didn't recognize the idea of that most homes probably are not insulating above roof deck. They're insulating at the ceiling level, but you have to remember the energy code considers multifamily projects that are 3 stories or less as residential, even though you're building them out of the IBC. So having the insulation entirely above roof deck value actually is a bonus because, like I said, those multifamily projects currently under the 18 have to do it 49 continuous, which is more than anywhere else that they would have to do. So that's a real positive in all of this. The wall values stayed the same, but another bonus in the 24 is instead of for your floor R values, instead of only having the capability of putting in an R38 cavity and making sure that it's in constant contact with the underside of the floor, there's options now. So you can do the R38 or you can do a cavity plus continuous option, or you get to do just continuous. So those are a few of the major changes as far as the residential goes for the thermal envelope. I didn't do a table for the commercial side. On the commercial side, there were a few changes as far as the thermal envelope. The biggest one was your metal framed and your wood framed, and part of that is the metal became continuous insulation, and the wood frame for Climate Zone 7 now added the ability that you could have a cavity insulation only, whereas in the past you had to have cavity and continuous. Any questions about the table on the screen?
Well, on the windows for the U factor, are those readily attainable or are they extremely much more expensive than what we have for today's purchasing?
That's an excellent question. As far as what's attainable, I can tell you that during the process, they did do research. They did pull things out as an overall concept about whether these were available, how readily available they are specifically for Leadville. I would not have that information right with us, so. Okay, if there's no other questions, Anne, if you wouldn't mind moving us to the next slide. Thank you very much. All right, so I just want to make sure everybody understands there's going to be a lot of changes, whether we, look at 21 or we look at 24 when it comes to the energy code. These are not all the changes by any way, shape, or form, but I felt that they were the most relevant to bring to everybody's attention. So on the 21, a concept that is new in the 21 for the residential is now there is a requirement for an additional efficiency option. In the 21, there are only 5 options. And so basically what you would do is pick one, and then you would be considered to have complied with it. There's one that's a really easy one, and I think a lot of it is already happening in Leadville, so it's not as onerous as it might seem. There is a requirement now for your whole house mechanical ventilation systems. Now that's a requirement out of the IRC, but the energy code is saying your choice as far as what you're going to install for your whole house mechanical ventilation for climate zone 7 is now an ERV or an HRV. There is new criteria that's been established as far as how you can start considering your ductwork to be inside conditioned space, which plays into your additional efficiency options. There's a requirement for mechanical ventilation testing. So all of your ventilation will now have to be tested. In my opinion, and I spoke against this actually when it was heard, was that this requirement, it's a requirement out of the residential code. All of your ventilation is out of the residential code, but they put the ventilation testing in the energy code. And they did that because the people who are going to do the testing are the same people who would do, your blower door test or your duct leakage test. So they said it makes sense to put it here. But I want to make sure that there's an understanding that, yes, this is here, but it's the ventilation out of the IRC that's going to get tested. And then it also brought in lighting controls. And the lighting controls are interior, and the lighting controls are also exterior. Now for the 2024, the big changes is the additional efficiency section, whereas in the 21, it's just pick one and done. This one requires a number of credits to be obtained to reach the requirement. It also has a lot of focus on the size of the home. So the size of the home is going to trigger either additional efficiency credits, or if you're going different pathways, additional items for it. There was a big mantra all throughout the 2024 about fuel debiasing, trying to incentivize electric appliances. There was a revision to your duct leakage section. Right now, as it stands under the 18, if your ductwork's inside the thermal envelope, you don't have to test. In the 21, it does require everybody test your ductwork, whether you're inside or outside of the thermal envelope. And in the 2024, they have a table now that you would work off of, and it kind of looks like it's really cumbersome, but it actually, in all reality, it looks a lot like the commercial side, but it also gives a little bit of a breathing room too, in my opinion. But that's just the world according to Hope. The lighting controls that were required in the 21 still exist, but they have been revised and revamped to try to make them more usable, or what they thought were better placements of it. The good news is, with the idea of wanting to have more affordable housing and having multifamily projects come in, the 2024 is so multifamily friendly as far as the, like some of the requirements and so forth. It has where multifamily, instead of having to test all of your units for blower door testing and all of your units for duct leakage testing and all of your units for mechanical ventilation, in the 24, it allows for you to do sampling. So you don't have to do all of them. You could do 7 or 20%, type of deal. And so there is that ability to kind of reduce some of those costs for it. It does bring in the concept of requirements for heating outside. And the nice thing too is, in the past, for multifamily projects, a lot of times they had to go to the commercial side of the code and pull some of the things there. So you were playing in both sides of the book. And the 24 basically created a lot of scenarios that, instead of having to go commercial and residential, you're just going with the residential side of things. So that was kind of the major differences, I would say, for the 21 to 24. I'm sure there's some questions. I don't know if anybody has anything right now.
Yeah, just on this page, on the 2021, it shows the mechanical ventilation testing. Can I assume that's still required in the 2024 as well?
It is, yes, yes.
The reduction in air leakage rates, what's the value there for 24?
So, and I probably should have put it into the 21 also. In the 21, they changed the testing metric, or it allowed for smaller structures to utilize a different testing metric of the CFM per square foot instead of the air changes per hour because of the volume situation.
Area
in the
versus
20, I'm sorry?
Area versus volume.
Exactly. And so in the 24, the reduction went for the air changes per hour, where it was 3, it's now 2.5.
And when you talk about the additional energy efficiency options, are those synonymous with compliance pathways?
I'm so sorry. You broke up there.
Oh, sorry. When you talk about additional energy efficiency options, are those the same as like the compliance pathways, or what are you referring to there?
So the additional efficiency options in the 21, how it works is no matter which compliance path you utilize, you have a criteria you have to do. If you go prescriptive, it's pick one of the options and you're done. If you go performance, you can either pick one of the options not included in your modeling calculations, call it done, or you have to be 5% better. If you go ERI, then your score has to be 5% better than what's listed in the table. In the 2024, it is different. The focus is really with those residential projects, but there is a tie-in to the additional efficiency depending on the size of the home and so forth. So,
Oh, could you please talk to the information that's going to be required on the construction documents in respect to water resistant barrier, sealed air barrier, vapor retarder, thermal envelope, things like that, please, so that we know what our design professionals and permit applicants are needing to put on the construction documents?
Absolutely. So, section 103.2 still exists in the 2021. And that entails things like the insulation R value and materials, the air barrier information, air leakage, or not air leakage, your mechanical systems, duct sealing. That whole section that we have in the 18 didn't change. It's still there, and all that criteria that has to be on the plans is there. Now, in the 2024, the section does move to R105.2 and the list expands. It now includes things like your solar. If you have solar ready, because we're going to have solar ready, there are solar ready criteria that will have to be placed on the plans. If you're having an energy storage system, that information will have to be placed on the plan. So the energy code did try to capture all of that, and nothing has been removed from that table, but there was some additions to that table.
I might just mention that regardless of whichever code that we get, I see that, administratively, we can help by updating our plans checklist too. So, when we get to that point of whatever the recommendation is, we'll revise those plan checklist for submittal. I think that'll be really helpful. We'll work with SHIMS to kind of redevelop those too. So we've got good guidance on submittal requirements for plan checklist.
Good news is you're in Excel's territory, so we have a plethora of technical resources that anybody can go onto the site, pull down, and be able to utilize, whether you're 21 or 24. So,
what's the testing requirement look like for mechanical ventilation and ductwork within the envelope? It's like a blower door for ductwork within the envelope and a flow hood for the mechanical ventilation.
you would be looking at a flow hood for the mechanical ventilation, and a blower door would be required. As far as the ductwork goes, in the 21, it no longer cares if the ductwork is inside the thermal envelope or outside of the thermal envelope. All ductwork will have to be tested.
No matter the size of the runs or anything else, it's got to have a duct blaster?
Yes, correct. Now in the 24 does take into account the number of supply and returns, how large the building is, and things of that nature. And you would follow that particular table instead of just across the board values.
Yeah, because it gets, the smaller the system, the more difficult it is to get the values.
Yep. So you'll love the 24 because that table was designed understanding that it's not a one size, duct design is not a one size fits all, and the testing doesn't work that way either. So,
and the flow hood is just looking for over, in and out are roughly balanced, or is it each outlet has to be tuned, inlet and outlet?
Yeah, it's I'm trying to remember how exactly it's written, but basically what they want to ensure is whatever ventilation system you have, you are meeting what you have on the plans, and you are meeting what is in the code. Because like the whole house mechanical ventilation is based on, the size of home, whether it's intermittent, whether it's, how many bedrooms you have, and that tells you how much CFM it has to be pushing. And the mechanical ventilation testing is just verifying that out in the field, if it was supposed to be 60 CFM, that after it's installed, they'll test it and it does actually get the 60 CFM.
Hope, is there anything in the 24 code that say, I don't want to use a brand name, but AeroSeal, if somebody was to AeroSeal a home and ductwork, are they exempted out of doing some costs for testings and things like that? If they just provide a sealing method that's gonna just guarantee it's done?
No, it does not exempt it out.
Part of that process is they're doing that while they're sealing the ductwork and the envelope, they're getting real-time readings, so I'm assuming they could just fill out a form saying, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Good. Those guys are pretty good at what they do.
I have so many questions.
right.
The whole house ventilation requirements, is it still in 21 and or 24? Is it still like the chart? It's like a very, very simple table based on square footage, more or less, or is it deferring to ASHRAE 62.2?
No, it's the table and it's the, the square footage, bedrooms, and that tells you how much CFM and so forth. It's still that table.
Gotcha, okay.
And you would be happy to know for the ERI pathway in the 2024, there was a divergence in the 18 and 21. So you couldn't get an ERI score because the ventilation system equation was changed in the energy code. In the 24, it went back to reverting to the ASHRAE standard. So now a HERS score and ERI score are one and the same, and you actually can achieve it. So, next slide, please. So these are the major differences from the 18 to the 21 and 24 for the commercial. In the 21, it was completely revised for the additional efficiencies. In the 18 right now, it's pick one and be done. In the 21, you have to get 10 credits. It's actually, there's one way to do it and it's really, really easy, but that's neither here nor there. All commercial buildings are required to do blower door testing or to have a building envelope commissioning performed. What was that, John? There is a revised section that deals with supplemental heat for heat pumps. There's an understanding there, making sure they're not both on at the same time. There's more lighting controls added. Grow facility lighting has been added. There's now energy monitoring requirements, but those are for buildings, the very large buildings for it to kick in. I don't think we'll see anything in Leadville, but that's a big one. And the existing building chapter does have some revisions to it, some pretty significant ones for the commercial side. Now, for the 24, there are concepts that have been brought in that are new. The thermal bridging, there's an actual new section that deals with thermal bridging. It's something that's been alluded to in the earlier editions, and now the 24 just outright says, here's how we're going to address thermal bridging. The additional efficiency section has been completely revised. You will have to get energy efficiency credits and renewable and load management credits, depending on the size of the building and so forth. Again, fuel types are going to matter. The air leakage section was revised and the air leakage rate was reduced. It was a 0.4 CFM is the requirement in the 2021, and then it was reduced down to a 0.35 CFM per square foot metric. There's a new section that was provided that created that basically gives you a little bit of a, I want to say leniency for simple mechanical systems. So the new section 409 does not apply to everyone, or the ability to apply to everyone, but it is there. There's even further grow facility lighting controls. The commercial in the 2024 now requires that you must install renewable energy. Now, with that being said, I already have had conversations with the state, and because the 2021 does not require that renewable energy be installed, they are allowing people to actually amend that out of the code. So it's here, but we can have it gone. And the existing building chapter was completely revised.
So you don't have to put solar on commercial buildings. You can amend it out, the state allows you to do it.
That's the one thing that we absolutely get to amend out. Believe you me, I saved that email from the state.
That's a big one.
I believe that's all I have. Correct, Dan?
I think we're questions. Yes, I know.
Right, and the basis of basically Hope and Mai's presentation was just to give you an update on what the changed in 21 and 24 and let you decide. Either way, you're complying with state codes when you adopt either the 21 or the 24, and we will help you put in whatever you want to enforce. I can say Hope and I's standpoint is the 24 is a better code, at least in most regards. There are a few things that are, I know I'm speaking for you, Hope, but
no, you're good.
24 is a better code and it has a little more leniency on what you're allowed to do, but ultimately the 21 and 24 are extremely comparable. The energy code, you do have more performance-based methods to comply with energy than you do in the 21.
Any questions? I was like drinking from a fire
There will
hose
be
tonight,
no
right?
questions.
It's all good.
Richie?
Go ahead.
So the state requirement, I wanna make sure I say this right, the state requirement for June 30 is the 2021 IECC and the models solar ready and EV charging ready. Is that right?
Model electric ready,
Yeah, the model.
because it is more than just EV ready and solar ready. Is there anybody that could speak to those? I'm not.
Yes, what would you like to know?
I was gonna say,
Well,
Hope.
I think that's its own.
And then the 2020, and then the after July 1 is not the 2024, it's the low energy, model low.
Correct. It is the model low energy carbon code, and I'm going to say this very non-politically correct as possible. Going from the 18 to that, you do not. You want to ensure that you get it done for the 21 or 24. You'll have to go to that in 2030 because that's the next time and you will have no choice, at least currently as it stands. You'll have to go to it. But going from the 18 to that would be, in my opinion, a detriment to both Leadville and Lake County.
My quick look is that it's pretty much everything in the 2024, but with a lot of enhancements, if you will. Colorado specific things that they've added onto it, so there's a lot.
So there's a fairly sizable difference between the 2024 and the LESS, is what you're
I
saying?
think so, yeah.
Okay.
From what my quick look.
That's what Hope.
Yeah. And where the 24 really had a focus on size of building, especially residentially, if you have any residentially, they hit you hard, and they hit you hard on the size of the building, and depending on the size, you no longer get to use the base of the energy code. If you hit a threshold, you will then have to go into the appendix and be a net zero energy home. Amongst many other things.
Nobody wants that. So then it gets back to the first part of
In
the
other
question,
words, nobody's ever gonna build again.
the model, or the electric ready part of the requirement on
I think we almost need our own presentation on that, frankly, just to be
Yeah.
educated on it. So I don't know if we can put that on the agenda for their next meeting.
Absolutely, you can work with, Shrooms and see what their, availability is, and so I'm wondering, about creating that. I don't know right now if we can, commit to the next meeting time, so I can save you some emails and things like that, and then we can start creating the agenda, but I do think that one is, seeing if we could put that on the agenda, to piggyback on what we've learned tonight. We definitely recognize we've got some urgency around the resiliency code. And so I think that our next agenda should be focused on the next steps of adoption of the wildfire resiliency code. And also then I'd love to see if we could put on that agenda as well, more discussion on that, on the second part of our requirements under our energy requirements.
Do we wanna discuss frequency? I mean,
Yeah,
last
I mean,
time it was like once a month, but I feel like we need to.
Yeah, I
put that
just
in
feel
the
like it's a
agenda.
really ambitious schedule, cause
Yeah.
I mean, last time we didn't have to choose between two and it took us years. Granted, we have COVID in there too, but
Right, we had COVID and we didn't have the deadlines that
right.
we have, we did, with the energy code, we made it in time with that, but it seemed like a more generous time frame that we had
Yeah.
last time than we do this time, so.
I think if we can do twice monthly, that'd be probably necessary to have any chance of this. I don't think,
Yeah, I was thinking every other week, so.
yeah.
Every week, okay, is there a day of the week that works, let me stop sharing here real quick. And.
I come and go a lot for the next 4 months, right? But a lot of go,
Is there,
but I can
Any
always
day?
do Zoom.
yeah, is there any day of the week that's preferable for you, or doesn't matter?
Wednesdays are fine.
I was gonna-
Wednesdays are usually better.
I was gonna throw Wednesday out as well.
Wednesday, Matt, do you have any thoughts about
Yeah, right.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
if we went to a regular meeting?
6.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Yeah, Wednesdays are fine. Yeah.
Wednesday is 4 to 6 your preferred time?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is
That
that
works, yeah.
good?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's real good.
So we could, skip obviously next week, and so we'd be looking at the following, which I think would put us on the 28th.
Yep.
Of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we'd be looking to dive in a little further to the wildfire resiliency, and kind of splitting our time then between that and looking at, the other component of the required energy adoption.
Cool.
Sounds good to me.
So, just recurring,
And then starting and reoccurring for the 28th every other.
like it.
So that would require availability, I mean, would you want us in on that meeting again to discuss, or do you wanna discuss it amongst yourselves and let us know what you've got?
How about yes, what would you, we would need hope for the energy portion, which
Right.
if you're
Yeah,
available,
please.
hope on the 28th,
If we dive into that, yeah.
if we do that,
We'd
what
probably
is your
split the meeting
availability
between
or,
fire and that.
Right.
And hope
Then
works
have a
for
meaningful
us.
discussion.
okay,
And I mean, it's possible that if, we have a really good slideshow that's put together or something, that we can navigate it too. I mean, don't think that model energy,
and maybe we could
Not
get you some
electric focus.
information ahead of time,
For
and
sure.
you could
I
field us
have some stuff
questions.
too that I'd be happy
Yeah.
to share as well.
And if you have specific questions, maybe we could get a Q&A from Hope as well, so.
Yeah.
Is
Do we have
there
access to that?
specific information you're looking for as far as for the model code?
I think just a general overview of it.
Okay.
And I don't think there's all that much to it, so it probably wouldn't take too long, but I do think it's packed with a lot, so we want to have a good understanding of it.
And love to, if you, after tonight, if you all have questions, get them to me and we'll get answers. So, so even when we're not meeting on Wednesday, if you, after tonight, this sinks in, I'll send the slide deck from tonight to all of you.
Okay.
And then if you have questions, shoot them over.
Awesome.
And we'll continue offline to continue to get your questions answered too between now and then.
So I will say this, if your adoption of the I-codes is depending on what IECC version you're looking for, it's better to bring the whole suite of codes from the same year together, so don't pick and choose.
Yeah, okay.
Don't take the 2021 IBC, IRC, and then the 2024.
Which I feel like we've done in the past.
Yeah, they work together when they're the same year better.
Yeah.
The city was under that 06 energy code when we did our last
Yeah.
combined adoption.
Oh,
Yeah, that was a while ago, but we got us all on the same, under the same one, so. Great, okay, so,
6 o'clock, so
yes.
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
a second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned at 6:02.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Barb, thank you.
Thanks, Hope. Thanks, Cole.
I don't know what happened
Of course.
to my voice.
God bless us,
Chase me
everybody.
was like.